The massive private jet stood gleaming under the bright morning sun, looking flawless from the outside. Executives admired it. Investors posed for photos beside it. The company proudly called it the future of luxury aviation. But hidden beneath its polished aluminum skin was a story no one wanted to tell. The man whose hands had saved the aircraft from becoming nothing more than expensive scrap metal had been pushed aside the moment the work was finished. They called him replaceable. They refused to pay him a single dollar for months of impossible labor. They laughed when he walked away carrying only his worn toolbox and the little hand of his young daughter. They believed they had won. But only 3 days later, something happened that froze every executive inside the hangar. One pilot after another quietly refused to fly the jet. Not because the engines failed. Not because of bad weather. But because every experienced aviator knew one terrifying truth. The only person who truly understood that aircraft had just been betrayed. Before we continue, if you believe kindness should never be mistaken for weakness and that good people deserve a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in doing the right thing, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire. Your support helps bring more emotional stories like this to life. Morning sunlight poured through the giant hangar doors as workers arrived carrying coffee cups and tool bags. Among them walked 39-year-old Rowan Mercer, a quiet aircraft restoration specialist whose reputation had spread through aviation circles even though few people outside the industry knew his name. Rowan never cared about awards or recognition. He cared about craftsmanship. Every bolt mattered. Every wire mattered. Every inspection mattered because he believed families trusted airplanes with the most precious thing they owned, their lives. Since losing his wife 4 years earlier to a sudden illness, Rowan had raised his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, completely on his own. Every sunrise began with packing school lunches, brushing tangled hair into neat braids, and promising her that everything would be all right, even on days when he wasn't sure it would be. The company that hired Rowan had purchased an abandoned executive jet that everyone else had declared impossible to restore. Hidden corrosion had spread through important structural sections. Electrical systems had been patched carelessly by previous mechanics. Fuel lines had microscopic contamination that could have caused catastrophic failures during flight. Insurance inspectors had practically written the aircraft off forever. Yet the wealthy owners believed restoring the jet would cost far less than buying a new one, so they searched for someone willing to attempt the impossible. Every famous restoration team refused the project until someone mentioned Rowan Mercer, the mechanic who quietly rebuilt impossible aircraft while never seeking attention. For nearly 7 months Rowan practically lived inside that hangar. Bright daytime skies came and went while he crawled through narrow compartments replacing damaged wiring one connection at a time. His hands became covered with cuts from sharp aluminum panels. His knees ached from endless hours on cold hangar floors. Many evenings Hazel sat quietly at a folding table nearby doing homework while her father continued working beneath open engine panels. She colored pictures of airplanes soaring through blue skies, smiling every time she looked toward the jet her father refused to give up on. Other workers clocked out when the afternoon whistle sounded, but Rowan often stayed until daylight faded because he knew shortcuts had no place in aviation. Everyone noticed something unusual about Rowan. He documented every repair with extraordinary detail. He created hand-drawn diagrams explaining improvements that even original factory manuals failed to describe. Whenever suppliers delivered incorrect parts, Rowan redesigned mounting systems that exceeded certification standards instead of forcing mismatched components into place. Inspectors who initially doubted him slowly began trusting his judgment more than official paperwork. Quiet respect spread across the hangar floor, although the executives upstairs rarely came down long enough to understand what was actually happening below. Finally, after months of relentless work, the aircraft looked reborn. Engines purred smoothly during daylight testing. Flight controls responded perfectly. Every inspection report exceeded expectations. Visiting engineers admired the craftsmanship hidden beneath access panels where no passenger would ever look. The company announced a luxurious unveiling event for investors, praising their own vision and leadership. Cameras flashed. Speeches celebrated financial success. Expensive catering filled tables while Rowan stood in the background wearing stained work clothes, exhausted but proud. He wasn't expecting applause. He simply expected fairness. Instead, he received an envelope. Inside wasn't the promised payment that would finally erase months of overdue bills. It was a revised contract claiming unexpected financial adjustments reduced his compensation to almost nothing. Company lawyers insisted he had unknowingly agreed to modified terms buried beneath dozens of pages of legal language. Rowan stared silently at the papers while executives smiled politely and assured him it was simply business. They thanked him for his dedication before suggesting he should appreciate the opportunity to work on such a prestigious aircraft. Months of sacrifice disappeared behind polished smiles and carefully chosen legal words. Rowan walked out of the hangar beneath the warm afternoon sun carrying nothing except his toolbox. Hazel waited outside after school, running toward him with innocent excitement before instantly recognizing something was wrong. Children often understand heartbreak without hearing a single explanation. Rowan forced a tired smile, held her small hand, and together they walked toward the bus stop because selling his truck months earlier had helped pay rent while waiting for the company's promised paycheck. Other workers watched silently from the hangar entrance, ashamed that no one had spoken up. News spread surprisingly fast through aviation communities. Mechanics talked during lunch breaks. Inspectors exchanged phone calls. Former military pilots heard what happened through old professional networks. Aviation is a surprisingly small world built on trust. Everyone understood that betraying the engineer responsible for rebuilding an aircraft wasn't merely unethical. It sent a dangerous message about how the company valued safety itself. 3 days later the jet sat prepared for its first demonstration flight. Wealthy investors gathered beneath clear blue skies expecting a flawless showcase. Television crews adjusted cameras. Catering staff arranged elegant refreshments. Everything appeared perfect except for one uncomfortable detail. The scheduled captain never arrived. He politely declined the assignment early that morning without giving public reasons. The company quickly contacted another highly respected pilot. He also refused. Then a third. Then a fourth. One by one experienced captains quietly stepped away from the opportunity despite extraordinary offers of money. Some simply claimed scheduling conflicts. Others mentioned family commitments. None criticized the aircraft publicly. But privately they all shared the same concern. If the company could treat the man who rebuilt the aircraft with such dishonesty, what other corners might they cut when profits became more important than people? Trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. Investors grew nervous as hours passed beneath the afternoon sunlight. Reporters sensed something unusual. Social media began asking why no qualified pilot seemed willing to fly the company's proudly restored flagship aircraft. Executives issued confident statements insisting minor scheduling issues caused the delay, but aviation professionals recognized the silence for what it truly was. It was a quiet protest built on integrity rather than headlines. Meanwhile, Rowan returned to repairing small regional aircraft at a modest maintenance shop across town. The building lacked luxury offices and polished marble floors, yet every mechanic there greeted him with respect. The owner hired Rowan immediately after hearing his story because skill combined with honesty was worth more than expensive advertising. Hazel often visited after school, proudly helping organize harmless supplies while dreaming of becoming an aerospace engineer someday. Their apartment remained small. Bills remained difficult. But peace slowly returned because dignity had survived even when money had disappeared. Unexpectedly, federal aviation auditors began reviewing paperwork connected to the famous restoration project after receiving anonymous concerns from industry professionals. They discovered something remarkable. Rowan's personal documentation wasn't merely thorough. It contained detailed engineering notes explaining dozens of hidden structural improvements that official company records failed to include accurately. Without those documents, future maintenance crews could unknowingly remove critical reinforcements or misunderstand specialized repairs. Rowan hadn't kept the records for revenge. He kept them because responsible mechanics protect future lives, even when no one is watching. Auditors requested Rowan's assistance. He arrived carrying neatly organized binders filled with months of careful observations. Every page reflected patience, honesty, and professionalism. Engineers reviewing the material were astonished by its precision. Several admitted the aircraft's continued safe operation depended heavily upon understanding Rowan's custom restoration methods. Suddenly the company realized the truth they had ignored. They hadn't merely underpaid a mechanic. They had alienated the one expert whose knowledge remained essential throughout the aircraft's future service. Executives rushed to repair the damage. Lawyers prepared settlement offers. Public relations teams drafted carefully worded apologies. But respect cannot always be purchased after betrayal. Rowan listened quietly before explaining that payment alone could never erase what Hazel witnessed the day they left the hangar, believing honesty had no value. Children remember moments when adults choose greed over gratitude. Those memories shape how they see the world. Instead of demanding revenge, Rowan proposed something unexpected. He requested full payment for his completed work, fair compensation for delayed wages, written recognition of every technician who contributed honestly to the project, and the creation of a scholarship supporting children of aviation mechanics pursuing engineering careers. He believed repairing the future mattered more than punishing the past. The request surprised everyone because it reflected character rather than bitterness. Faced with overwhelming industry pressure and growing public attention, the company accepted every condition. The scholarship fund was established. Honest workers finally received recognition during a public ceremony held beneath bright daytime skies inside the very hangar where Rowan had once stood unnoticed. This time applause wasn't reserved for executives. It belonged to the craftsmen whose invisible work protected countless passengers every day. Months later, the restored jet finally completed its first successful flight. Before takeoff, the captain personally requested Rowan's presence during the final inspection. Not because regulations required it, but because trust deserved acknowledgement. As the aircraft lifted smoothly into the clear blue sky, everyone watching understood the flight represented far more than engineering success. It represented integrity overcoming greed, patience defeating arrogance, and quiet excellence proving stronger than loud power. Hazel watched the aircraft disappear into the clouds while holding her father's hand. She smiled with the confidence only children possess when they see goodness rewarded after enduring hardship. Rowan realized that although money had helped rebuild their future, the greatest victory came from showing his daughter that honesty might be delayed, challenged, and tested, but it never truly loses. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes good people still exist, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire so more inspiring stories can reach people who need hope. Special request: before you leave, comment, "Integrity always wins," if you believe honest work should always be respected and rewarded. As evening approached, warm daylight slowly softened across the airport, and Rowan packed away his familiar toolbox one final time. The same hands that had quietly rebuilt a forgotten aircraft had also rebuilt a little girl's faith in the world. The executives eventually recovered their reputation, the company learned an unforgettable lesson, and the jet continued carrying passengers safely across the skies. But the true legacy was never the airplane itself. It was the reminder that the strongest foundations are built not from steel, money, or prestige, but from honesty, compassion, and the courage to keep doing the right thing even when no one seems willing to notice. And somewhere high above the clouds, every safe landing silently honored the single father who refused to compromise his principles, proving that the greatest victories belong to those who choose character over convenience every single time.